The year was 1875, and the small town of Deadwood, South Dakota was a bustling hub of gold mining activity. The local saloons and brothels were always full of rowdy miners, and the sound of gunfire could be heard throughout the night. One day, a group of miners stumbled upon an old mine that had been abandoned for years. Unbeknownst to the poor miners, the old abandoned mine was a dark and foreboding place, shrouded in mystery and danger. The entrance was hidden behind a tangle of vines and thorny bushes, as if nature itself was trying to keep people away. As the miners made their way inside, they were met with a cold, damp breeze that seemed to whisper through the tunnels. The air was thick with the smell of earth and decay, and the only sound was the drip-drip of water from the ceiling. The walls of the mine were rough and jagged, with sharp rocks jutting out in every direction. The floor was slick with mud and moss, making each step treacherous. Every now and then, the miners would catch a glimpse of something moving in the shadows, but they couldn't quite make out what it was. As they descended deeper into the mine, the darkness grew more oppressive, and the sounds of their footsteps echoed through the tunnel's. Strange symbols and markings were etched into the walls, as if some ancient civilization had once used the mine for mysterious purposes. It was then that they stumbled upon the glowing rock, hidden deep within the mine's labyrinthine corridors. It seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, casting an eerie green glow on the miners' faces. They could feel the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end, as if something ominous was about to happen. Little did they know, they had just unleashed a terrible force that would bring the entire town of Deadwood to its knees. They brought the rock back to town and showed it to the local saloon owner, a man named Wild Bill Hickock. Wild Bill Hickock was a legendary figure in the old Wild West. Born James Butler Hickock in 1837, he gained fame as a skilled gunslinger and lawman. He was known for his lightning-fast draw and deadly accuracy, and his exploits became the stuff of legend. One of Wild Bill's most famous stories involved a game of poker. As the story goes, Wild Bill was playing poker in a saloon when he was shot in the back by a man named Jack McCall. It's said that Wild Bill was holding a pair of aces and eights, which has since become known as the dead man's hand. Despite his reputation as a gunslinger, Wild Bill was also a gambler and a showman. He performed in Wild West shows, showcasing his skills as a marksman and sharpshooter. He even performed in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, alongside fellow legends like Annie Oakley. Wild Bill was fascinated by the rock and decided to keep it in his safe. However, he didn't realize that the rock was actually a meteorite that contained an alien virus. Legend among the Native Americans had it that the rock had fallen from the sky centuries ago, crashing into the earth with a deafening roar. The Native American tribes that roamed the area believed it to be a gift from the gods, a sacred stone with unimaginable power. But as the years went by, the rock became more of a curse than a blessing. It was said that those who came into contact with it fell ill, writhing in agony as their bodies were consumed by an unknown virus. The rock was passed down from generation to generation, hidden away in the darkest corners of the land, until it eventually found its way into the hands of a group of miners looking to strike it rich. They stumbled upon the rock deep within the mine, hidden away in a chamber that had long been forgotten. At first, they were in awe of its beauty, mesmerized by the way it seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. But soon, they began to notice that something was wrong. The air grew thick with a noxious gas, and they could feel a strange tingling sensation spreading through their bodies. Before long, they were writhing on the ground, their eyes glazed over as the virus took hold. They tried to crawl away, to escape the mine, but it was too late. The virus had already spread, infecting everything in its path. The miners were never seen again, their bodies consumed by the virus that had been unleashed from the glowing rock. And so the mine remained abandoned, a dark and eerie place where the forces of the unknown reigned supreme. Unfortunately, the poor souls of Deadwood were unaware of the origins of the mesmerizing rock. The virus began to spread, and soon, the people of Deadwood began to get sick. When people first contracted the virus, the symptoms were mild. But as time passed, they grew more severe. People began to turn into zombies, and the town was quickly overrun. The famous gunslinger, Wyatt Earp, arrived in Deadwood to help fight the outbreak, but it was too late. Wild Bill Hickock had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing quite like what he encountered in that old abandoned mine. The glowing rock that the miners had unearthed had unleashed a terrible force, one that had infected the people of Deadwood and turned them into zombies. At first, Wild Bill was immune to the virus. He watched in horror as his friends and fellow citizens were transformed into mindless, flesh-eating monsters. He tried to fight them off, using his gunslinging skills to take them down, but it was no use. The zombies kept coming, their numbers growing with each passing day. It wasn't until Wild Bill was bitten himself that he truly understood the horror of what was happening. He could feel the virus coursing through his veins, transforming him into something he had never imagined. His skin grew pale and clammy, and his eyes turned a sickly shade of green. He felt a hunger deep in his gut, a hunger for human flesh that he couldn't resist. Wild Bill tried to fight the urge to feed, but it was no use. His mind had been consumed by the virus, and he was now a zombie, like the others that roamed the streets of Deadwood. As he stumbled through the abandoned streets, Wild Bill could feel his body decaying. His muscles grew weak, and his limbs began to rot. But still, he hungered for flesh, and he knew that he would stop at nothing to satisfy that hunger. And so he wandered the Wild West, a cursed and undead gunslinger, a legend transformed into a monster. His eyes burned with a sickly green fire, and his twisted lips curled into a grotesque smile as he searched for his next victim. While poor old Wild Bill roamed the streets of Deadwood, gunning down anyone who crossed his path, Wyatt Earp, along with a group of survivors, decided to make a stand in the local saloon. They fortified the building and prepared to fight off the zombie hordes. The battle was intense, and many lives were lost, including Wyatt Earp's own brother, Morgan. Unfortunately, their fortification efforts simply weren't enough. Not when zombies were not the only worry. Wyatt Earp was always known for his quick reflexes and sharp shooting skills. But even he was no match for the horrors that lurked in the Wild West. One day, while he was out hunting for food, he stumbled upon an abandoned cabin in the woods. It looked like it had been untouched for years, but there was something about it that drew him in. He cautiously made his way inside, his hand resting on the handle of his gun. The cabin was dark and musty, with cobwebs draped across the corners of the room. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet as he made his way deeper into the building. Suddenly, he heard a noise coming from one of the rooms at the back of the cabin. He drew his gun and cautiously approached the door. With a deep breath, he kicked the door open, ready to face whatever was inside. But what he saw made his blood run cold. The room was filled with the stench of decay, and the walls were covered in a sickly green slime. In the center of the room was a strange object, pulsing with an otherworldly light. Without warning, the object exploded, engulfing Wyatt Earp in a blinding flash of light. When the light subsided, Wyatt Earp was gone. In his place stood a grotesque creature, half man and half monster. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its skin was slick with slime. From that day forward, the creature that was once Wyatt Earp roamed the Wild West, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked just beneath the surface. In the end, the only survivor was a young woman named Calamity Jane. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape, Calamity Jane mounted her horse and rode off into the distance. Her silhouette was striking against the golden glow of the fading light, a lone figure against the vast expanse of the Wild West. She rode with purpose, her hair whipping behind her in the wind as she galloped through the dusty terrain. The sound of her horse's hooves echoed through the silent landscape, a lonely rhythm that seemed to fill the emptiness of the plains. The sky was painted with a myriad of colors, from deep purples to bright oranges, and the clouds were tinged with hues of pink and red. It was a beautiful sight, but there was something eerie about it, as if the colors were a harbinger of things to come. Calamity could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. The virus had ravaged her town, turning her friends and neighbors into monsters, and she had been forced to leave everything she had ever known behind. But still, she was a survivor in a world gone mad. The wind howled around her, and the trees rustled in the distance, as if whispering secrets to one another. The sound of her horse's hooves grew fainter, and the sun sank lower in the sky, until finally, it disappeared altogether, leaving only the darkness of the night behind. Calamity Jane rode on, into the unknown, into a future that was uncertain and fraught with danger. But she was brave and strong, and she would not give up until she had found a way to stop the virus and save the world from the horror that had consumed it. She fled Deadwood and never spoke of the horrors she had witnessed. To this day, some say that the ghost of Wild Bill still roams the streets of Deadwood, gunning down anyone who enters his saloon.